Who was that? Is that Daffy Duck or something? Hello everyone, we are now a quarter way through 2026, which is bloody terrifying. But it also means we've reached the end of another month, we've reached the end of March, so it's time for the March film ranking. So just like last month, I've got 11 films, funny enough, and also just like last month, I've been incredibly busy, so that's why videos, again, have been pretty quiet. But I imagine that come sort of the summer, like end of April, start of May, around from then onwards, I think videos should pick up soon. It's purely because of university projects. I've had a lot at the minute, a lot of film projects I've had to do for that, but, hopefully some more videos will be coming soon. But yeah, this month actually a pretty solid lineup of films. There's a few new releases now that there's a bit more coming out in cinema. There's been a few releases on this list that I've been able to check out. There's some classics, there's some underrated gems, and even for the films lower on the list that are a bit weaker, they're still a bit interesting. Some of the lesser films on this list, they're still at least interesting to talk about. So a pretty good lineup, I've got to say. So let's not waste any time, let's get into it. Jumper is not a film about Hayden Christensen's woolly jumper collection he made at a crochet club. No, it is in fact about this guy who has the ability to teleport anywhere, and it is a sci-fi action film from Doug Liman, who also directed Edge of Tomorrow, which, cool cyber concept, executed very well. This has a very cool concept, I will say. I think it really is a cool idea to start with, and I think the first act of the film shows some really great avenues the story could have gone down. It's shown this main guy, David, played by Hayden Christensen, who has this ability and him growing up with it. I think there's some interesting ideas that the film sort of taps into, but when you get to the second and third act, it just evolves into a very generic sci-fi action movie, and a lot of that potential I really think is wasted. I think showing, his formative years and showing him growing up with this power, there was a lot of, and how he adapts to it, how he adapts his life to this kind of power. I think there's a lot of potential. There's a lot of potential with that, and I think there was so many avenues the film could have gone down, and it just kind of goes down the most generic route, which is a shame. I mean, the second and third act, he just uses his power. He's trying to do it to woo his high school sweetheart. I mean, how many times have I seen that before? Really original there. Yeah, it's not awful, and as I say, I'm a bit more charitable because I do think there's a lot of potential here. It just is kind of squandered, and yeah, it just could have been a lot more than what we got. Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Bride, the recent film, it's about Frankenstein's monster who's very lonely and he's looking for love and connection in his life. It's also about this woman, Ida, who has been killed and is about to come back to life. It's also about the ghost of Mary Shelley almost possessing Ida to do her bidding. It's also about the mafia in 1930 Chicago. It's also about this Fred Astaire-esque Hollywood dance actor played by Jake Gyllenhaal. It's also about these two detectives trying to prove themselves. It's also about this female revolution caused by Ida a la Joker and... If you couldn't tell, The Bride is absolutely overstuffed with plot, and it is, there's no beating around the bush, it is a complete mess in every sense of the word. Now, I'm not saying these are bad ideas. I think all of these ideas on paper work very well, but when they're all smashed into this 2-hour film, it just does not work, and it is so confused and scattershot, and I was just baffled half the time what I was watching. I will say that it is an enjoyable mess. I think the production is great. I love the set design, the costumes, the makeup and whatnot. The makeup on, obviously, the bride and Frankenstein themselves is great. I think Jessie Buckley is a fantastic actress in this, and she really goes balls to the wall crazy. I love that passion from her, and some good other actors as well. Christian Bale's fun to see. And I say, it's the kind of film that, yes, it definitely does fail at what it's trying to do, but at least it's a product of vision and imagination, and it's got these creative ideas, and it's not just streaming slop, it's not just milking a franchise to death at this point. And I will respect a failure like this more than other, films that fail. I will still be more charitable to a film like this. When I was a kid, I never actually watched the Clyde with a Chance of Meatballs films, which I'm surprised by. I obviously Phil Lord and Chris Miller, who did the Spider-Verse movies, the Lego movie, and another film that's come out recently, which we'll be talking about later. But, I don't love this movie, but it's a fun one. It's a creative concept. Flint, this scientist who is able to make food out of water so it can rain food and whatnot. It allows these citizens to feed themselves, you know, as opposed to just like sardines. It's a fun idea. And I do find Flint quite a fun protagonist. I love his dynamic with Sam, it's very endearing. And there's plenty of other fun characters. You've got Earl, you know, Mr. T plays him, he's so funny. You've got Flint's dad, Tim, played by James Caan, and all the gag with his eyebrow, that's always really funny. Animation-wise, it's also quite creative, like the visual style. It is definitely, the character design is definitely an acquired taste, but it's very creative, and a lot of the set pieces with the food, it's quite fun and quite vibrant and colourful, and overall it's just a fun little movie. It's not the deepest thing in the world, but I enjoy it. I think had I watched it when I was younger, I probably would have got a lot out of it, but I enjoyed it. I remember The Lone Ranger coming out back in 2013 very vaguely. I just remember Johnny Depp was in it. I remember the Lego set tie-in for this movie. I remember those, and I just remember the film just not being a particularly well-received movie, and that's a shame because it's a genuinely underrated little film and I really, really enjoy it. You know me, I love a lot of Western movies. Obviously, you know, the Clint Eastwood, Sergio Leone movies I enjoy. I love some of the Hollywood ones, like the John Ford ones, like Man Who Shot Lily Valance is great. High Noon's another really good one. I know it's not John Ford, but I love me a good, you know, good old-fashioned Western. But we don't really get many nowadays, and it's nice to see in modern Hollywood, you know, in the 21st century, it's nice to see a big, you know, proper like adventure yarn, like classic, you know, thrill ride, where, you know, you've got these fun characters, fun action set pieces, all from Gore Verbinski, who did the Pirates of the Caribbean films. I really enjoyed this. This is, I would say, on the level of the Pirates movies for me. I think the dynamic of Tonto and John Reed is a fun dynamic, although Johnny Depp's casting as a Native American man, it's hard to take seriously, especially when he's like, you are just another white man. It's like, so are you, mate. It's really hard to take seriously, but it's a fun dynamic. I enjoy Helena Bonham Carter's character, you know, the gun in her shoe heel was quite fun. It does definitely drag, I think, in the middle, and that's kind of my only main critique, and that's what does drag it down, but then it picks back up with that phenomenal climax on the train. You know, that whole action set piece is genuinely excellent. You know, I'm not gonna say it's the deepest film ever, but I really did have a fun time with this, and the highs of this film are worth it for that alone. I always love a good Buster Keaton movie. You know, I have a soft spot for his style of, you know, comedy in the silent era, and Sherlock Jr. is still great, but dare I say it's probably his most overrated film?
Take that back, you...
I think that's purely because I just often see this cited as his best film. I've often seen that cited, and like on Letterboxd, for example, and I don't think that's the case personally. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still great, it's still charming as all hell. You know, I love the stunts, like the barrier one where he jumps into the car from the barrier, that's great. So much visual comedy and some great gags. And I like the whole plot of Keaton's character. He's a film projectionist, imagining himself in the movies as a detective. That's quite a nice little sort of meta thing. But I think the reason I don't love it, it's the pacing, I think, because it's 45 minutes. And yes, that is just about a feature film. That technically qualifies as a feature film. But it's really weird because it's this little awkward halfway point, because a lot of Buster Keaton's shorts are about 20-25 minutes long, and his feature films are about like 70-75 minutes long. So it's in this sort of awkward halfway point where it's not fully developed. I think had it been about like a 70-minute film, for example, like his other films, I would probably be a bit more invested in like the character stuff. And then comparing it to the other short films, I think those ones move at just a bit of a quicker pace. So I think it just feels a little bit awkward for me. I don't know. It's a shame. I didn't want to say this is overrated because I do still love, you know, Buster Keaton's movie. I love Sherlock Jr., but it's just, for me, definitely not his best film. But it's still a cracking little watch, and I'd recommend. Next up we have F1, the movie from last year. Obviously, it was a bit of an awards contender this year, and it was sort of the de facto Oscar villain. Like, there are plenty of people who weren't happy about this film's Best Picture nomination, the fact that it won Best Sound, sorry, but that meant it got more awards than like Mighty Supreme, which, fair enough, that is a bit of a joke. But I will say, I still really enjoyed F1. I don't care. I thought it was a really fun blockbuster, and like, it's not groundbreaking, but it was really fun, really just like a good old-fashioned blockbuster. Some great lead actors, you know, Brad Pitt, Javier Bardem, Kerry Condon, you know, great, charming actors, a fun, you know, classic good old story, you know, the sort of old man coming out of retirement, you know, the kind of last chance saloon kind of thing. And the actual production of the film was fantastic, especially those racing scenes, which are so well filmed, so well edited, so they feel really immersive and are really fast-paced, and they are just really thrilling and exciting to watch, and I really do love it. And the main critique I would have of this film is that it does feel very formulaic, and that's not usually a problem for me. Like, it is definitely a winning formula, but I think for me, it's the same director as Top Gun Maverick, Joe Kosinski, and this just feels like Top Gun Maverick, but with race cars instead of fighter jets. And there are certain scenes in this film where it's just cribbed from Maverick, and it's really noticeable, you know, when you look at these films side by side. As I say, like, it is a winning formula, so I still enjoyed the film, but I think with how noticeable it was, that's where I took issue with it. But overall, it's still a fun movie and I would highly recommend it. It's called Friday. It's the classic Cary Grant screwball comedy, and this sort of era, like the 30s into the 1940s, sometimes the comedies of this era don't fully do it for me. Bringing Up Baby, that's another one with Cary Grant as well from this time that I didn't fully gel with. Here's Gone Friday really did though. It really was up my alley. It's an incredibly fast-paced film. The dialogue is so snappy and so it goes so fast, but there's some great laugh out loud jokes and delivered brilliantly by the actors, and they bounce off each other very well. I say Cary Grant is one of those actors who is just so charming in everything that he did, you know, and he's just one of those actors, one of those classic actors that he's just great to watch. And him and Rosalind Russell, they have a great chemistry throughout. Their romantic plotline, I think, you know, the former lovers possibly getting back together, you know, I like that little subplot. And the actual plot of the whole news agency that Cary Grant works for, they're trying to prove this man's innocence for a murder. That's engaging. It's like all these things, you know, the main plot, the romantic subplot, and all the visual comedy and the dialogue and all the humour and whatnot. It all kind of just comes together really well, and that's why I think I get a lot out of it, because it's that perfect balance of plot, character, and humour where I just get a lot out of everything, and it just clicks, and that's why I enjoy this one more than most comedies of the era. Hoppers is the latest film from Pixar, and they got 2 releases this year. They got this, and in the summer, Toy Story 5, which is kind of being billed as the big event for Pixar this year. Because I feel like when the marketing for Hoppers came out, people just kind of thought, not anything of it, more the attention was on the big sequel to Toy Story and whatnot. So this is kind of that, you know, just sort of forgettable one at the start of the year. You have that sometimes, like Onward felt a bit like that. However, this film had pretty good word of mouth when it came out, and so I went to check it out, and yeah, this is one of Pixar's best in a while. It's one of their strongest of the 2020s, I think. It's just, this feels really fresh for Pixar. It feels not like anything they've ever really done before. It has a really zany, wild tone, and I really like seeing that different side of Pixar. It's not trying to replicate what's come before, but it still also has the great heart that every great Pixar movie has, and the great visual storytelling. You know, it has that like in spades, as well as, you know, fantastic animation. You've got great characters, so many lovable characters, and it's got so many fun set pieces, and it just feels like it keeps on topping itself each time. And there's certain things where you're like, oh my god, they're actually doing this. It's such a creative, off-the-wall film, and I really respect that. I really respect how fresh this film feels. So definitely give it a watch. I think, you know, support, you know, strong animated films and not just, you know, generic cash cow movies like Toy Story 5 is likely going to be, I can't lie. That's what it feels like. The first Fu Panda film for me kind of occupies a similar space to the first Shrek film for me, in the sense that it's a real comfort film for me that I can watch anytime. And although I personally prefer the second installment of both Shrek and Kung Fu Panda, the original is the one I always go back to, because it's that comfort film. I can just watch it anytime and I never get bored of it, and I'm always quoting along and just having a great time. That's the thing, the first Kung Fu Panda is one of the most tightly plotted animated films I've ever watched. Like, there is no wasting time, there is no faffing about. It just cracks on with what it's doing, but there's also so much depth and nuance to the characters. It's that perfect balance. So if I'm in a mood where I want to kind of analyse it and get that deeper meaning from it, from so much of this, whether it's Po, whether it's Shifu and Tai Lung's story, whether it's the wise words of Master Oogway, I can. But if I just want to watch a funny haha Jack Black Panda movie where he says skadoosh and quote Oogway's don't quit noodles lines, I can also watch it on that level. That's the thing, it's just so much fun. There's so much heart, so much humour. The action sequences are genuinely fantastic, like Tai Lung's escape. The bridge fight scene is amazing. The art direction is so well done. The voice acting, the music, it's just the whole package, and I never tire of this film. Everybody is going nuts for Project Hail Mary, and you know, I've just seen unanimous praise for this film, and I was so excited the week leading up to the film, and it did not disappoint. This was fan-bloody-tastic, and please, you know, even people who don't go to the cinema much now, go and see this, because this is just amazing. It's so good, and it's going to be hard for something to top this film, if I'm being honest, for the rest of the year in terms of new releases from 2026. I mean, just on a technical level, cinematography is stunning. It, you know, the visual effects of space and whatnot, it is so immersive and so detailed. The effect of Rocky as this puppet, again, it's so immersive. It's like, I'm just thinking, how did they do that? It's brilliant. It's so brilliant. And I'm like, yeah, film absolutely has a future. There is still so much that can be done with the medium if this film is anything to prove. Ultimately, it is a relatively simple story. It's about Ryan Gosling playing this science teacher turned astronaut, Ryland Grace, who he's been sent on this mission to try and find this substance to, it's killing the sun and to, save humanity and whatnot. It's that big idea sci-fi that has that grand scale, but it tells it in a very intimate way, because it is, for a lot of the film, is pretty much just a two-hander between Ryan Gosling and a rock puppet. And I know saying that out loud sounds really, really stupid, but it's the most wholesome, sincere, heartfelt thing I have seen in a movie for some time, and in terms of like new releases, because the bond between these two is something else. It's so precious, seeing these two wildly different beings coming together for a common goal to try and help each other. And there is something so quietly beautiful about that, and quietly powerful, especially in this day and age where everything seems incredibly cynical. It's nice to just have something like that these days. And not only was I welling up at several points in this film, my theatre was as well. The amount of people I heard next to me, sniffling and tearing up. This film is having a hold on people because it just is special. It's what people really need to see. It's a beautiful little film, and I love it. So please go and watch it. I don't want to spoil too much, but just go and watch it, because I really do feel like this will be a modern classic. And in terms of like sci-fi epics, this can stand alongside Nolan's Interstellar and also a certain Stanley Kubrick film which has topped this list. So I've teased before that there are certain films that I have wanted to watch for a while. And Stanley Kubrick's 2001: A Space Odyssey, I've often said that, I'm going to watch it soon, I've always put it off because it is one of those like mammoth films in cinema. It is a stone cold classic, like a Citizen Kane, like a Casablanca, like a Godfather. It is one of those. And after watching The Godfather and being a smidge disappointed with it, and not saying that it's a bad film at all, but just not the absolute best of the best, I was a bit worried that 2001, I might have that similar feeling. Oh boy, no, I didn't. This is, for me, one of the best films I've ever seen, the best Stanley Kubrick film, one of the most immersive, enthralling experiences I've had watching a film. It really takes you on an adventure on this grand odyssey in space. Even if the film is a slow burn, it is perfectly paced. Yes, it moves slow, but it moves the exact speed that this film requires. It is this methodical journey through space, and it doesn't feel like it drags, in my opinion. I mean, there's so much iconic imagery from this, and so not just imagery, but music, obviously. The Zofora, I can't remember the name of it, the iconic bit of music from this film. You would never think that a classical piece of music like that should fit a space opera, Odyssey kind of thing. Yet it does, and it's perfect. I talk about the imagery, obviously you've got the monolith, you've got the apes at the start of, the Dawn of Man. You've got HAL 9000, one of the best film villains I've ever seen. His voice, it's so calm. He's just a red dot, but he's so maniacal, so cunning, and it's so great to watch unfold, and seeing Bowman overcome him. It's a fantastic little conflict, and I love that. Visually as well, for a 1968, this film is, to say it's ahead of its time is to massively understate something, because the production design, the cinematography, it looks absolutely stunning. And if this ever gets re-released on the big screen, I'm going to watch this, because this is one that you have to watch on the big screen. And I pray for its 60th anniversary in 2 years' time that it will get a cinema re-release of some kind, because God, do I want to see it on the big screen. And obviously it's a Kubrick film, so it will leave a lot to the interpretation, and I love that about it. I love when films give you that chance to engage with it and not necessarily make up your own mind because they couldn't be asked. It's giving you these ideas to ponder and think about, and let you connect with it in an individual way. Anybody, the amount of readings of this film, there's so much out there. There is so much. I'm not going to sit here and pretend, I figured out the mystery of 2001: A Space Odyssey. Of course I haven't. It leaves things ambiguous enough to make your own interpretations. I think what I took away from the film, on kind of an overall level, it's the whole idea of humanity strive for perfection, and how ultimately that misses the point of what makes us human. I'm thinking stuff like, obviously, the perfect black monolith. It's this perfect object that, from the dawn of man, they are drawn to, and it results in the apes using the bones to create weapons, which obviously evolves into later on in the future when we have space weapons and whatnot. When they find it on the moon, they're all trying to post photographs, and that ultimately causes the monolith to freak out, and it causes problems for them. You've got HAL 9000, obviously, kind of almost you can look at a commentary on AI nowadays. This sort of very perfect sort of being. Obviously the design, it's this perfect red circular dot. It thinks it knows everything, but it's that human ingenuity that David has to use to overcome HAL. It's making those mistakes and trial and error, but ultimately getting there and having that free will to think and be creative and think about solutions to the problem that HAL ultimately can't. I'm also thinking stuff about like the little tubs of paste food that they eat in space and whatnot. You compare that to the end where David has like that full meal and a drink. That's what I took away from the film, and I could be wrong, but that's just what I took from it. It's that whole strive for perfection that is ultimately in congruence with what humanity is about. And for that reason, and many more, that's why 2001 remains a stone cold classic with a capital C. And that's the end of the ranking, so I hope you enjoyed it. I don't know if that will be a longer one because of the 2001 analysis, but let me know all your opinions on the films in the comments. If you've seen 2001, let me know your interpretations of it. These kind of films are great for sparking discussion and debate. I'd love to hear any of that. I'd love to hear as well what films you've been watching recently, what new releases you're looking forward to. And until next time, you take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.